With regard to water intake, if you are the type of person where you don't drink a lot, it can lead to constipation. And if you drink too much, it can lead to a little bit of loose stool. So there is a little bit of a balancing act that you're going to want to do when incorporating water. And what I like to do with my patients in my clinic is, as a general rule, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to another Sunday Q&A. Stephen here with Team U4Work, and today's question comes from the World Carnivore Tribe group on Facebook, where a member had recently asked, Bristol stool 1, constipation after a month on carnivore, difficulty passing gas and inflated parts in gut as the gas attempts to move, producing beautiful symphonies. Never had diarrhea, been taking electrolytes which help a bit. I've noticed I get super tired/sleepy when eating 7 slices of bacon. Any advice? Well, with regard to being constipated on the carnivore diet, a few things that I've noticed that help for me and also my patients in my clinic is number 1, water intake, number 2, salt intake, number 3 is going to be electrolytes, and number 4 is going to be fat intake. With regard to water intake, this one right over here, it's going to be different based off of everybody's individual needs. And with regard to water intake, if you are the type of person where you don't drink a lot, it can lead to constipation, and if you drink too much, it can lead to a little bit of loose stool. So there is a little bit of a balancing act that you're going to want to do when incorporating water. And what I like to do with my patients in my clinic is, as a general rule, half your body weight in ounces is what you want to drink every single day, and that's your body weight in pounds. So if you are a 200-pound individual, you would want to consume 100 ounces of water every single day, and that's going to be your baseline. And then certain things would dictate whether you need to modify that and either add in more water or subtract water from that total. One of those things is going to be your physical activity level. If you are somebody where you are very, very physically active and you are sweating a lot, then you're going to want to add a little bit more water on top of that to add water back into your body from the water that you lost through the act of perspiration. If you're the type of person where you're very, very sedentary and you don't really move a whole lot, then you don't need quite as much water. The second thing is going to be if you sweat a lot. So if you are the type of person where you do perspire a lot, then again, when you perspire, you lose water. So you're going to want to add a little bit more water. If you're the type of person where you don't really sweat a whole lot, then you don't really need to add a whole lot, and you could actually subtract a little bit from that number. And then the third thing is going to be the climate that you live in. If you live somewhere where it's very, very hot and humid and you're sweating a lot because you're outdoors, then once again, you're going to be losing water through the act of perspiration. So you're going to want to add a little bit of water to make up for that water loss. And if you live somewhere where it's very, very cold and you're indoors a lot and you're not sweating a lot, then you're not going to need quite as much. So you could subtract from that total. The second thing is going to be your salt intake. With regard to salt intake, this is similar to the water where everybody is going to be different. There's no right or wrong amount. And with regard to salt intake, if you are somebody where you are either not consuming enough salt or consuming too much, this can also have an impact on your bowel movement. So with regard to salt intake, this one right over here, what I like to do is you want to go by taste. If you are drinking something like distilled water, it's basically naked water. There's no minerals in there. So you would want to add a little bit of salt, and personally I prefer Himalayan salt or Celtic salt. So you could add one of those to your drinking water. But if you're drinking distilled water, add a little bit of Himalayan or Celtic salt to your drinking water to add the minerals back into the water that were removed during the distillation process. If you aren't drinking distilled water, then adding salt to your water isn't really going to be a huge important thing that you need to do. It's going to come down to the mineral content in the water that you're actually drinking. If you are drinking a water that has a parts per million of over 300 parts per million of a mineral count, then you don't really need to add salt to your drinking water. You could just go ahead and drink it as is. If you are drinking water and there are less than 300 parts per million of minerals, then you would want to add in a little bit of salt. But those are a couple things you could do with regard to salt intake. And then with regard to salt intake, the other thing would be salting your food. With regard to your food, you want to be careful. If you salt it too much, it can lead to cramping, nausea, and also loose stool. That's something that I've experienced in the past. So you want to really make sure that you fine-tune the amount of salt that you're incorporating into your diet. Too much, you're going to get nauseous, you could get some diarrhea, and you could get a whole host of issues. And not enough, you can get a little bit constipated. So just be out on the lookout for that. Third thing is going to be electrolytes. With regard to electrolytes, this one right over here, once again, you would want to add it to your water. And once again, it's going to mimic what exactly you do with your water intake. If you're the type of person where you sweat a lot, if you're the type of person where you live in a very hot climate, if you're the type of person who's very, very physically active, you'd want to add a little bit more. Me personally, when I do my drinking water, for every 4 liters of distilled water, I will add in 5 milliliters of concentrated mineral drops from Manal. I'll include a link right up over here to a recipe that I did a few weeks back or a few months back with regard to my water recipe, but that's basically it. It's 4 liters of distilled water, a little bit of Himalayan salt, just enough to taste, and then with regard to the electrolytes, it's going to be 5 milliliters for every 4 liters of water, and I find that that works for me. And speaking of the salt, I want to quickly go back to salt a little bit more. When you are consuming salt, this is very important. You want to consume it to taste. So if you are putting salt in your drinking water, you want to put just enough that you cannot taste the salt in the drinking water. If you can taste the salt in the water, then you've added too much and you're going to want to subtract a little bit the next time around. So be mindful of that. And then the fourth thing is going to be fat intake. With regard to fat intake, this is another thing where if you consume too much fat, it can have a laxative effect and you can get some diarrhea or some loose stool. So if you are the type of person where you are constipated, then adding in a little bit of extra fat can help to move everything around. But you want to be careful because once again, if you do add in too much fat, then it can lead to things like diarrhea and loose stool. So you want to be very, very careful. For me personally, I know that minimum 100 grams of fat is when I feel my best. If I get below 60, I'm going to get blocked up and also my energy levels are going to be really, really low. If I go above 140, 150-ish grams of fat, I'm going to get some loose stool. So for me, the sweet spot is somewhere between 100 and 130 grams of fat. For you, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to want to experiment. Start with a lower amount and then gradually add in a little bit at a time. You're better off doing that than adding too much all at once, because if you add in too much all at once, you can develop things like nausea and you could also end up getting things like loose stool and diarrhea. So it's better to start out with a little bit and then gradually add it to find what your level of tolerance is. But those are just 4 little tricks that you can incorporate into the carnivore diet to see if it can help with constipation. Again, water intake, half your body weight in ounces, and then modify it accordingly. Salt intake, just enough that you can't taste it if you're going to be adding it to your water. If you can taste it, you've added too much. 3, electrolytes. Me personally, I'll do 5 milliliters of concentrates mineral drops for every 4 liters of distilled water. If you're not drinking distilled water and you're drinking mineralized water, then you don't need quite as much. And then the last thing is fat intake. With regard to fat intake, if you have too much, you can get nauseous and develop loose stool. So be careful with the amount of fat. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you have any other questions with regard to anything that I discussed in this video, or any questions at all, go ahead and ask your questions down in the comment section so I can help you guys out. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to keep making these Q&A videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.